There's a Wall Street Journal out there with an amazing investigative report on how corporate America, in its efforts to deregulate themselves, might be stealing people's identities in order to post fake comments in favor of repealing regulations at certain government agencies. Now, in this investigative report, they detail how hundreds of thousands of comments have come into at least 5 different federal agencies. Now, these comments would, of course, call for the end to different Obama-era consumer protections. Now, the investigation done by the Journal found that a lot of these comments, a large number of them, did not come from actual human beings. Now, one example concerns the so-called Fiduciary Rule, right? So that's something that had public comment. So you could go in and you could comment on the Fiduciary Rule. It was a Consumer Financial Protection Bureau rule. Now, this Fiduciary Rule was going to be put into place in 2019, right? So the whole point of it was to prevent conflicts of interest between you and your retirement planner. Now, you would want your retirement planner to work for you, right? To get the best deal for you. Well, the Fiduciary Rule would ensure that by putting a regulation in there that makes sure that you do not have conflicts of interest, that you don't get kickbacks from different investment groups and things like that. Now, this comment period, right, was, of course, inundated by lots of comments, some obviously in favor of the rule, others in favor of repealing the rule. Now, one comment, I should say, came from Robert Schubert. Now, this is a Devon, Pennsylvania salesperson, right? And he's detailed in this report. Now, a comment posted in his name on the Labor Department website opposed the rule, saying, quote, "I do not want, and object to any federal interference in my retirement planning." So, okay, that's pretty strong and straightforward, right? I don't want the government dealing in my business. And there's a lot of people who agree with that statement, and there's people, of course, who disagree. Well, Schubert, in spite of a comment being made in his name, did not agree with that comment. In an interview, Mr. Schubert said the comment was a fraud. He did not post it, and he does not agree with it. He said, quote, "I am disgusted that people can post comments using my name." And that's just one of many examples. Now, in the report, the Journal hired a polling firm that reached 50 people who allegedly commented on different rules, right? They found that 40% of them said that they did not post anything on the department's website. So 50 people, and almost half of them did not post anything, and yet suddenly their names came up in a post that's, of course, usually against the rule. Well, that's just one example. Now, the Journal also previously found fraudulent postings under names and email addresses at the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, Securities and Exchange Commission, and the Federal Communications Commission. It continued. Now, the Journal's findings were cited by calls from Congress, by the way, to delay the repeal of net neutrality rules, right? Now, I've talked about that before. They found hundreds of thousands of comments that were pro-repeal that ended up being fake. These are completely fake. They're very, very dubious. Eric Schneiderman from New York, the Attorney General, he was looking into this. And did Ajit Pai care? No, of course not. Ajit Pai ignored the obvious fraud because Ajit Pai is a fraud. And so he decided to throw out the rule anyway because that's what he was paid to do. But it gets worse. While the Journal reported 818,000 identical comments out of 10.1 million collected for the net neutrality rule, after contacting 2,700 senders, they found that 72% said they had nothing to do with them. And yet, they found an even more insidious trend among this, right? Now, it turns out the software that they used, right, that whoever did these fake comments was specially engineered to have subtle differences to make it seem like the comments were more authentic, right? Now, the journal reported that subtle similarities appeared in 1.3 million net neutrality comments that seemed to be different. The same long sentences appeared in many comments, sometimes up to 30,000 times. And all this stuff, and I reported on some of these comments before, they were what you would consider to be corporate lawyer speak, right? Something that normal human beings wouldn't actually say. And of course, it also happened to match the rhetoric being touted by the company. So, a little fishy, right? And now, it's not just on the net neutrality repeal. This is being used everywhere. In 2017, for example, the CFRB was inundated with fake comments after it attempted to regulate payday lenders. But it's not just fake comments. It's actually worse. Postings the journal uncovered went beyond merely duplicative. They included comments from stolen email addresses, defunct email accounts, and people who unwittingly gave permission for their comments to be posted. Hundreds of identities on fake comments were found and listed in an online catalog of hacks and breaches. So they are using literal stolen identities in order to say, oh, look at how many people support repealing these Obama-era regulations. It must be these regulations are super, super unpopular. Look at all the American people who are against it. I guess we should go ahead and repeal these rules that will massively help industry. You don't find that fishy at all? Super, super fishy. Now, there's more. It also discovered that the clandestine senders of these faked mass emails were also fabricating pro-consumer comments, apparently to give the appearance that the public cared about both sides, but not enough to reveal or offset their deception. While many fakes were anti-regulatory, the journal found pro-regulatory comments on the FCC and FERC websites where people said they didn't post them. In most of the cases, the comments that were actually pro-net neutrality, for example, most people agreed with, but they were still mad that their names were used by these whoever was posting these without their permission. Now, in the cases, while most people did not authorize them, they said they agreed with it, and they said a group or individual might have had their names in a list of like-minded people. That still doesn't give them permission to actually use their names. And some of these people said that they were angry that someone who had access to their email address would end up posting it, even though they generally agreed. So now, that's the method that they used. But who are they? Who am I referring to? Well, the journal, unfortunately, did not uncover the people who are actually doing this. But we don't have to have them pointed out. We already know. It's the corporate lobbyists and the trade associations and the corporations themselves. No, I do not have hard evidence. But think about it. They have the means, they've got all the money, and they have the most at stake when it comes to these regulations. These rules are the difference between making a lot of money and making a fuck ton of money. So, of course, they have the most to gain by repealing these rules. And of course, they also, since they use pro-regulatory comments as well, they try to cover it up by saying, oh no, there's people obviously in favor, but look at all the people against these regulations. But look, it's the companies. It's the companies. They have everything to gain. Nobody gains from removing pro-consumer rules on payday lenders. Payday lenders trap people in cycles of debt with high interest rates. Nobody gains with the repeal of net neutrality, except for the telecommunications companies who will now put in fast lanes that cost more and are able to block and throttle content. So, yeah, of course it's them. And here's the kicker, right? We've been giving corporations access to our personal data for years. every time you send out, or sign up for a mailing list or an email, or you go onto their website and they get cookies and they can get your metadata, that's information that is now theirs to do whatever they want with. And the FCC and Congress, well, they will allow corporations to do whatever they want and sell your data to personal or to third party, to third parties, so they can make an extra few bucks. They're selling your information. They're selling your data. So it's no surprise that some of this data and some of these names and email addresses are turning up on fake comments that are there to destroy regulation. And what's worse, of course, is they share this data with the government, and the government shares it with other corporations. They've got all of our info. If they wanted to manufacture fake consent, then they have everything that they need to do it. And so that's what's scary. And we have not paid enough attention to our privacy concerns. And I think we should. I mean, there is a big problem here with consumer privacy. And we don't have enough laws or protections that protect us from this kind of obvious fraud. So we've got to do something about it. And I think the first step is, of course, shining a light on it, right? If we actually expose them for what they're doing, well, then maybe these corporations, they're not going to do it anymore, right? Because we need to catch them in the act, and it appears that's kind of what we're doing, right? So we definitely need to do more investigations and more actual journalism into finding who is actually coming up with these fake comments and who's propagating them and all that, so we can catch their hand in the cookie jar. And from there, we can actually work to put a stop to it. Now, it wouldn't stop something like the FCC. Ajit Pai wasn't elected by the people. However, Trump was elected by the people. The Republicans were elected by the people. Corporate Democrats were elected by the people. That's where we can actually make a difference. That's why I think it's really, really important to vote. In 2018, we've actually got a real shot to get actual progressives to run for office that don't take any corporate money. And if we actually do that, we work together, then we can actually take back our government from the corporations who we know are lying, cheating, and stealing our identities in order to make an extra buck. So if I want to leave you with anything on this story, it's that elections matter a lot. Hey everybody, thanks for watching this video. If you want to see more like this, please hit the subscribe button below. And if you want to support truly independent progressive media, please consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/TYTNation.